So hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. It's just gone 1 o'clock, so I'm just going to give everyone a chance to join. Do feel free to drop into the Q&A area and say hi. We've disabled the chat feature as we've discovered it can cause problems for some people using screen readers. So I can see a few more of you joining now. Glad you could make it today. Okay, I think we'll make a start now. So hello everyone and welcome to the 17th session in our Accessibility Insights series, where AbilityNet's Robin Christopherson, Head of Digital Inclusion, hosts a monthly online chat with individuals who are each working to improve digital accessibility and digital inclusion. And this month he's chatting to Ted Drake, who is Global Accessibility and Inclusive Design Leader at Intuit. I'm Annie Mannion and I'm Digital Communications Manager at AbilityNet, and I'll be running you through today's session. So just to go through a few bits of housekeeping, we have live captions provided today by MyClearText, and you can turn the captions on using the CC option on the control panel. We also have additional captions available at streamtext.net/player?event=AbilityNet. Slides are available at slideshare.net/AbilityNet and also on our website at abilitynet.org.uk/intuit-webinar. And if you have any technical issues or you need to leave early, don't worry, you'll receive an email in a couple of days' time with the recording, the transcript and the slides. And depending on how you joined the webinar, you'll find a Q&A window. So if you'd like to ask Ted or Robin any questions, do drop those in the Q&A box and they'll address them in a few days' time after today's session. And we'll follow that up with a blog on our website, again at /intuit-webinar. And then we just have a feedback survey you'll be directed to at the end, which invites you to tell us about any future topics that you'd like us to cover. So we'd really appreciate if you'd fill that in. Okay, so that's it from me, and over to Ted and Robin.
Fantastic. Thank you, Annie. Ted, really pleased to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us this month.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I have learned so much from the accessibility leaders in the UK, and it's great to be able to join again and give what I have back to the UK leaders.
Fantastic. As we have from US active advocates and experts in this area, so a bit of transatlantic collaboration there, mutual beneficial relationships. Let's hope that they remain strong, regardless of any other aspects of that particular transatlantic activity. So we always start off with a really cheesy question. What are you drinking to help you get through this ordeal? I've just got some really strong tea, kind of bucket-sized tea.
I typically am a coffee drinker. And this particular cup, I didn't plan on grabbing this. I just grabbed it from the cabinet, is made by the deaf-blind potter in the United States. What's interesting is he has, it's a matte black coffee cup with several engraved lines. And there's a glaze at the top, a shiny glaze that drips down, and it drips down in multiple layers. And his concept is that there are multiple layers to people. Someone that's deaf, blind, or deaf or blind, they're not like a cookie cutter. One person is the same as everybody else, but everybody has different facets. So his website, I believe, is deafblindpotter.com.
Wow. Really worthwhile plug there. Let's hope that people go and visit that. Fantastic. Thank you. Cool. So a little bit later on, we'll talk about, the more recent history, maybe COVID related. But the first question I want to ask you, which I ask a lot of my guests, is what, has been the last, say, decade of accessibility? What have been the big milestones and in your opinion or in your experience? And what do you think what are the big takeaways from the last 10 years?
I think the biggest thing that's happened in the last 10 years is if you wind back the clock, when I started working at Intuit, there were probably 15 different JavaScript libraries we were using. And a product could have 4 or 5 versions of JavaScript running. And what's happened is that we've become standardized. We have React, and React is pretty good. iOS, Android, they're excellent. Microsoft has done really good work with Windows 10 and Windows 11. And what this means is that the average developer doesn't have to fight with creating everything over from scratch. We don't have 500 carousels on our products. We have maybe 2 or 3 carousels. And that's not just at Intuit, that's across the whole industry. And so I think though what's happening is that there's a lot more consistency when someone comes to a website. For instance, WordPress powers, probably 40% of the websites out there. When you come to a website that's powered with WordPress, it's easy to understand how that's going to work. And when you take consistency, when you take widgets and components, and you don't have to design those, you don't have to build those, it gives people the time to design and build what is special about a product. So it frees up a lot of time, makes it easier for customers, makes it easier for developers. Unfortunately, sometimes that means that a platform becomes popular that's not accessible. And that's the challenges we have. HighCharts is an amazing graphing platform, but a lot of companies and a lot of products moved away from HighCharts because a sexier alternative came up and they wanted to try this new graphing. And then all of a sudden, our customers are starting to say, wait a minute, I thought that chart worked and now I can't use it. So that's also one of the struggles, is that there's always a new flavor. But I just remember 15, 20 years ago that every page had to be done uniquely. We were constantly working on, how am I going to fix this particular line of code? And now we're looking at, how are we going to fix that, component?
Yeah. For best results, use IE 10, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
With a brilliant basis like WordPress, for example, we should mention that you can still break accessibility, of course, but the tools that we're working with out of the box these days are really good. And I think HTML5 deserves a huge shout out there as well for kind of native inclusion. The building blocks that people are using these days, thankfully, Flash died a death, as did many other, more challenging technologies as well.
You mentioned HTML5. I just want to throw in a little bit that I found interesting. So HTML4, I was working at Yahoo on a tech product, and one person said it was like a Web 2.0 explosion in the factory is what that product was. This was the shift from documents to applications. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we had Victor Sarin that was working closely with us, so we were able to actually make that application accessible from the beginning. But we're basically taking HTML4 and we were twisting it and breaking it and doing stuff that it wasn't meant to do. And then ARIA came out. And ARIA was a way for us to say, okay, we've got these documents and we're destroying them in order to make them look good and single page applications, but they're fully inaccessible. So ARIA allowed us to redefine those applications. Then HTML5 looked at what was the best out of ARIA and started taking those things like ARIA required or landmarks and making that part of the HTML5 spec. What I thought was interesting, I think it was about 2 years ago, is that Android started introducing ARIA functionality as native Android. So they took the live region and they pretty much took it directly out of ARIA and put it into Android. So it's interesting how you can take the best of this and that, and all of this comes together into what's going to make it easier for everybody in the future.
Absolutely. I'd love to carry on talking technology and code, but I want to get a good mix here. And you're going to be speaking this month at our big, B2B tech conference, TechShare Pro. And you're going to be talking about the importance of champions, accessibility champions within organizations. So tell me about how that works. What's the role of accessibility champions within an organization the size of Intuit? And, would that kind of implementation of a champions network or the role of accessibility champions, would that change significantly for other organizations?
I think it's critical that it changes for every organization. I think that's the beauty of an accessibility champion program, is that it's a concept, it's a community, but it's also, it morphs as to how each company is built. Intuit is a company that's very customer focused. And so our champion program is mostly focused on empathy. We want people to learn about accessibility. We want people to understand how people use assistive technology, how you can use inclusive design. That's part of our champion program. We want people to volunteer. We want people to create captions, audio descriptions. So that works for us, but it may not work for a completely different company. They may be more focused on documents and compliance. They might be more focused on physical, it could be a gas station, and they may be more focused on how do you help a customer at the gas pump. For us, the champion program gave structure to an unstructured community. We had people that were passionate, but we had no way of recognizing them. And we had no way for them to say, I want to move forward in my career and focusing on accessibility. So what we gave was an easy way to join the community, very easy way to join the community. Once you're in the community, there's a regular awareness. Every day almost, there's a new notice in the Slack channel. Look at this article or watch this video. And then there's a roadmap for people to become product leaders and subject matter experts and become a leadership within the company. And that's what's really been successful at Intuit, is making it easy for people to be recognized and then also giving them the power to make a change.
So is that an informal thing still, or is that aspect of the people that choose to take on that kind of role recognized with some extra bandwidth, maybe some other remuneration or support? Is it a project only?
Our level 1 champions, which so far we've had over 1,000 people become level 1 champions. There's no extra commitment on that standpoint, other than the fact that they're going to be hooked into a lot of new information and opportunities. Level 2 champions are our product leaders, and we work with their managers before they become a level 2 to get at least 10% of their time dedicated to accessibility. Some of them have more than 10%. And then our level 3 are subject matter experts. That's typically 100% accessibility. So that's actually a job title change.
Wow. I hope I haven't stolen any, of your thunder from CSP for a whole session and many more insights. Please tune in, guys. You can register just by searching for TechShare Pro. Fantastic. Let's move on, talking about, how you guys are really knocking it out of the park internally. There's a brilliant blog that Intuit you have around best practice when it comes to employment and recruitment practices and policies. Are there any sort of top takeaways you can give us from that, or just to point people at it and say, dig in?
One of the things that we've tried to do is be open. I've encouraged our champions to write articles, and it's one thing to say that we want to hire people, diverse people. It's another thing to show that we actually are hiring people and giving them the power and the respect they need. So we just published an article this last week about one of our champions who realized he had vestibular disorder, and he's been actively helping our motion designers testing their motion. So he wrote about how the champion program and how Intuit gave him the ability not just to make an impact, but he learned a lot about himself in the process. We have others who have come forward and talked about their sobriety, their neurodivergent, mental health, physical. We have another person. She's about to publish one who's she's hard of hearing. She uses lip reading. She's talking about how she works in Zoom environments. Because it's what we've hoped to do is just letting people know that if you're looking for a job and you want to work for someone that's going to support you with accommodations and in a respectful way, here's a company that's actually doing it. And I will say our big inspiration, at least the accessibility team, has been Microsoft. I think Microsoft has done a fantastic job with that. And I would also say the BBC. When you think about the BBC and you think about how their accessibility team and their employees with Ouch podcast, 1800 seconds on autism, you know, there are people there and you can relate to those people.
You mentioned the Ouch podcast. It's one of my favorites. Just search for Ouch, guys, and you'll get first-hand stories. If you want, you know, to have your understanding of accessibility, disability, inclusion, and exclusion made very real with real life experiences. It's a fantastic listen. Really good. Ouch. Cool. So I should probably say as well at this point that AbilityNet run a range of courses on accessible best practice in recruitment and onboarding. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, and I'm sure Annie can share something at the end there too. But yeah, there's really straightforward things you can do to take away the fear and apply really sensible adjustments or accommodations, as you guys call it, in the area of the application process and onboarding. So yeah, I would be remiss not to mention that. Fantastic. So let's talk about COVID then. We've talked about, you know, recent years. Now let's talk about recent months. What have you, or you know, your organization as a whole, learnt from COVID? You know, we've all kind of been on a journey, haven't we?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. You know, a lot of people have already talked about the obvious, you know, where the ability to work remotely, everybody now understands that it's possible. And that's been a big help for people with disabilities, especially moving forward. I remember Cisco did a project where they were focusing on those. I think they called them transportation disabilities. In other words, people that were qualified to work in different positions, but they weren't necessarily able to get to the workplace. So they created this project about 10 years ago. How can we put the technology in their house in order for them to work remotely? And they actually had to prove that. What they did was they shifted one group in India and they noticed a 250% increase in productivity with that team versus the team that was going into the office. That was a really great project that Cisco did. But one of the things that we learned was when COVID hit and Intuit shut down, we all came home. We all started figuring out what we were going to do. I realized that we essentially now have this 12 to 1 o'clock lunchtime that was empty. So the following week, we started a lunch and learn series. And I just reached out to all of our champions and to my friends in the community. And every day we were having a presentation, a webinar like this internally. And it really, really blossomed because people realized I can learn something. I can do something different. I can share my story. That has been tremendously impactful. In fact, it just became overwhelming for me to manage, 5 days a week of these seminars. So after 5 months, we ended it, and then we just restarted it in September. But now it's only 1 day a week. So today, I'm going to talk about personalization and inclusive design. Last week, we talked about VPATs, and next week, we have the Vista Center for the Blind coming in to talk. So it's really a broad spectrum. So I would say it's allowed people around the world to gather, to share information, to do so in new ways. It's given us the time and the space to expand what we normally we wouldn't have had the time to learn.
I think COVID has taken the long-standing requests of disabled employees of more flexible working and the option of home working, and made it a reality. And it's also taken some journalists have said, or some pundits have said, 10 years worth of innovation and concertinaed it down into 18 months. So it's been a really exciting time. Let's hope that the benefits of some of the changes that COVID has brought for disabled customers and employees, and for every employee, and means that that'll be a longer standing situation, that we don't go back to the norms of before. So is there a legacy as far as Intuit that COVID has brought, do you think?
I would definitely say that we have a product for self-employed individuals. And I think that we're probably going to see a greater shift away from large businesses to people that are now working on their own. I was listening to a podcast this morning about the restaurant industry. And they were talking about a lot of people that refuse to go back into the restaurant industry because of the hours and the pay. And so they've actually gone on and started their own business, like their self-catering or food transportation and such. So I think that we might see a lot of those shifts. One other thing about COVID is that before COVID, Zoom was the preferred platform. People that were blind, people that use screen readers, people that were deaf and use closed caption. Zoom had used inclusive design and had worked with their customers to provide things like being able to share your screen reader sound or not share your screen reader sound. It's like a lot of complicated stuff. At Intuit, we were using Zoom within the accessibility team to do customer reviews, customer interviews, and the company was using Blue Jeans. But everybody quickly realized that the only platform that was set up to manage this broad spectrum of meetings was Zoom. And it was because Zoom had used inclusive design from an early stage. And then Google Meets and Microsoft Teams, they had to catch up because they weren't as prepared as Zoom. So I think it's a really good lesson on inclusive design.
Absolutely. And I won't name any products, but certainly pre-pandemic days, I'd be often joining online meeting and my heart would sink when certain products were used because I knew that it was going to be a really tough one. I wouldn't be able to mute myself. I would have to make sure I had a pair of eyes to hand to click the join button, etc., to test my microphone and camera and that sort of thing. So yeah, wow, we've moved on a long way. I think those particular platforms have actually upped their game as well, which is absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to talking tech then. My favorite area. So let's look forward. What do you think, what are you most excited about in the area of digital inclusion and technology, either personally or, within Intuit or just within the industry or, tech environment more broadly? So tech and future.
There's two things that I'm really looking forward to. One is actually an old idea, and that's raising the floor, which was this concept that a person would have a personal profile. And that personal profile might be stored in the cloud. But as I go up to an ATM and I put my card in, it recognizes who I am and that I want high contrast screen. Mm-hmm. If I go on an airplane, I sit in an airplane seat, it knows who I am and it will automatically turn on captions. It's like the technology changes for me instead of me changing for the technology. And with today's technology, we're actually seeing that happen. We're seeing that someone on their device says that I don't want a lot of animation. So they pull up a page and the page automatically delivers a reduced animation version, that kind of stuff. I think that's really exciting. The other thing I'm really excited about is the concept of no interaction, which means like an Apple Watch, you fall and the Apple Watch detects that you fall. And so it automatically, like if you're riding a bicycle and you crash, it's going to contact the 911 for you. So I'm not actually having to do anything to my watch. The watch is actually adapting to my personal experience. Or if you leave your house and your thermostat turns the energy down, I think that's going to be really exciting. Of course, it's also a big privacy concern.
Yeah, but we've been threading that needle for some time, haven't we? Yeah. So what about AI? I mean, I know that exists in the kind of machine learning aspect of fall detection and that sort of thing, but does AI feature in your excitement going forward, or is that kind of a mixed bag?
I think where AI can really help is when it simplifies life. A good example would be with TurboTax, our tax product in the United States and Canada. There's probably 70,000 or more screens that are involved in the tax process. but each person may only have to look at 15 of them. But we use artificial intelligence as you're filling out the forms. The artificial intelligence is figuring, okay, these are the screens. I need to add this screen to the queue. I need to remove this screen from the queue. I need to make sure that this question is asked. And if that question is asked, so I think AI can really simplify life. And I think that's where we might see, forms that are pre-filled, buttons, screens that you don't have to go through because they've already figured out what it is. Acknowledge, we think that this is your personal, your mailing address, and you show your mailing address instead of asking someone to input their mailing address. I have a Tesla, so I'm excited about the concept of autonomous driving. I don't trust it yet. I'll trust it on an empty freeway, but I don't trust it going to the store.
Yeah, you don't want to beta test that. Definitely not.
No.
Wait for 4th gen, fully autonomous. Absolutely. Wow, I'm so jealous. Maybe one day I will have one. Although I suspect by then the idea of private car ownership will be a bit of a anachronism. But yeah, oh great. I mean, talking about AI, something as simple as, and I don't know if this is real AI, but browser autocomplete within forms. I can now just hit a form and it'll give me a suggestion. I can choose it from a drop down for, say, my name, and then with one single tab, every other form field in that form has been auto completed with other stuff as well, based on the labels, etc. Probably not AI, but certainly feels like magic to me as a blind person. Yeah,
I don't know if you're the same way, but when I come across the form that doesn't do that, I get so frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. We're upping the bar, like you said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, we're rushing towards the finishing line, which is awful. So let's finish off by putting a question to you from last month and then asking you to provide one for our next guest. So last month, we were interviewing Jonathan Mosen. He's a blind CEO of a diverse employment agency in New Zealand called Workbridge. And his question put to you, or to Intuit in general, was, what are you doing to make the lives of your disabled employees of all types as inclusive as possible and to help them reach their full potential?
It's a really great question, and it goes back to, are you really paying attention to not just hiring people, but also allowing them to prosper? That's the difference between diversity and inclusion, is whether or not someone can get the job, but also exceed at the job and get promoted to new levels. The Accessibility Champion program, while I hadn't expected that to happen, has actually had a major impact on it. A good example would be, we had an intern start, and in her second week of the company, she attended a big meeting with the CEO. It was like an all hands in that location. She was from the National Technology Institute for the Deaf at Rochester Institute of Technology. She was hard of hearing. She was having problems hearing his speech. So she messaged me on Slack, and I suggested in the temporary that she opened up Google Chrome, Google Slides at the time, open up a slide presentation and let Google Slide at least translate it. But I also suggested that she go up to the CEO afterwards and tell him. And that's one of the things that we want to do, is give everyone the ability to have some ownership and some confidence. So she did. She went up to the CEO. She showed him the Google Slides that she was using, and explained that she wasn't able to hear them. So he kicked off a specialized team the next week. And that included people from our technology team, our accessibility team, our talent acquisition. And within 3 weeks, we had a protocol set up so that from now on, anytime a leader speaks, there's going to be a cart. There's going to be live captioning. And whenever anybody in the audience needs a ASL interpreter, there's always going to be an ASL interpreter. And that was a very fast action that was done because one person, she had just become an accessibility champion, and she now was part of this community, and she had the confidence to go forward and talk to the CEO. And we had already kind of started the ideas, but we didn't have that traction yet. It just took that one person to come up and share her experience. And this happens throughout the day. Every day there's something new.
Yeah. communication, open communication, where disabled employees, well, diverse, all employees who are, it's a diverse workforce. We're all different shapes and sizes. Going back to the cup at the very beginning, we're layers upon layers. We don't, any of us, fit into simple boxes. That open communication and the Champions Network's a brilliant framework or kind of conduit for that level of communication. Fantastic. Well, the final question is for next month's guest, who I can't actually name yet, but it's going to be someone from the gaming industry. So have you got anything to pass on to this mystery person, about inclusive game design?
Sure. I'm not much of a gamer. I don't have the time for gaming, but I was listening to a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
I love that. I love that you do, because honestly, they're the hidden gems. Well, they've been around forever, but more people need to listen to podcasts. Yes, sorry, Karen.
Yeah. No, they're amazing. But it was this conversation with a game designer and a woman that had schizophrenia. And she was talking about how she was a consultant on this game, and how the game used her and her experiences in a very positive way. So my question is, and I'll read it so that it's more understandable. It's one thing to make a game accessible. It's another level to incorporate diverse experiences in game development. Hellblade is a game that sensitively incorporates psychosis in the story and gameplay. What are other examples and trends that include diverse experiences and abilities in the game's development?
Wow, what a brilliant note to end on. I will pass that on to the mystery person. Thank you so much, Ted. It's been an absolute pleasure. There's been so much to take away. I'm sure that we'll get brilliant questions in the Q&A and fantastic feedback. So thanks again. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we can speak again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll pass back to Annie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ted and Robin. There are lots of questions that we hope to answer online in the next few days, and you'll all receive an email to access them. So finally, just a bit more information that might be of interest to you. So as Robin mentioned, we also run online training sessions on digital accessibility, and you can find out more at abilitynet.org.uk/training. We have a special code to use on our training courses for webinar attendees, which is AbilityNet webinar 10. So you can save 10% on all of our courses, and some courses coming up soon include on the 10th of November, how to use assistive technology at work, in education and at home. And then on the 11th, accessibility for designers. On the 25th of November, video game accessibility. And on the 30th of November, how to run accessible, inclusive meetings and events. And then just also to let you know about TechShare Pro, we have it's Europe's largest accessibility and inclusion gathering, and it takes place on the 16th, 17th and 18th of November. You can book now at abilitynet.org.uk/TechSharePro. And you can also use the code TSP21_insights, and that's a half price ticket offer for people attending this webinar. And then just finally, you can sign up to our, newsletter at /newsletter for further information about digital accessibility. We have a YouTube channel, and you can also download our podcast at /podcast. And then we have a suite of accessibility services that are available to suit all types of organisations. And then also don't forget about our next free webinars that you can access at /webinars. On the 7th of December, we have our next Accessibility Insights session. And then on the 14th of December, we have a session looking at career development. So thank you again, Ted and Robin, and everybody who's joined us. And once again, please do fill out the feedback form that you'll be directed to at the end. So thanks, everyone. Bye.